After my son passed away, the world felt like it had ended twice over. First, I lost him. Then, as I sat with his memory, clutching the will he had left behind, the doorbell rang. And there she was, his ex-wife, the woman who had abandoned him 15 years ago, standing on my porch with her designer handbag, her cold eyes scanning the house as if she already owned it. "I heard about the inheritance," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You know that money belongs to me." My heart stopped. I looked at her, the audacity, the cruelty, the arrogance, and something inside me snapped. She had left my boy when he was at his lowest, and now she dared to demand the fortune he left to me. What she didn't know was that she had just awakened the fiercest part of me. If she wanted a war, she would get one. And I would make sure she regretted ever stepping foot on my doorstep. My name is Margaret Cole, and I am 80 years old. The wrinkles on my hands are deep, carved by years of holding a family together with grit and prayer. My son Daniel was the brightest star in my life. He was a kind man, too trusting, too forgiving for this world. I still remember his wedding day years ago. He had chosen Claire, a pretty brunette with eyes like polished marble. She smiled wide for the cameras, clung to his arm as if she were madly in love, and promised him forever. But forever, as I would learn, meant only as long as the money flowed. Claire left Daniel 15 years ago. She didn't just walk out, she tore him apart. They had been married 10 years by then, but when his business struggled and he nearly lost everything, she packed her bags, took what she could, and never looked back. I watched my son cry into his pillow like a child. He begged her to stay, promised her things would get better, but she was already gone. For 15 years she never called, never wrote, not even when he was in the hospital. Daniel rebuilt himself. That was his way. With nothing but stubbornness and a sharp mind, he clawed his way back into business. By the time he was in his 50s, he had turned investments into gold. And when illness finally came for him, he left behind not just memories, but a fortune, $24 million. Money that, by law and by will, came to me, his mother. I would have traded every penny for one more hour with him. But fate doesn't bargain. So there I sat, in my old house in North Carolina, grieving, when Claire reappeared. 15 years had passed, yet she looked as though she had aged only in spirit. Her face was pulled tight with bitterness, her clothes expensive but tasteless, her perfume choking the air between us. "Margaret," she said, as if we were old friends. "It's been too long." I didn't answer right away. My heart was pounding in my ears. I had just buried my son, and here she was, talking about time as if it were some casual thing. "What do you want?" I asked finally, my voice low, controlled. She smirked, tilting her head. "I want what's mine. You know Daniel would have wanted me taken care of. 24 million is too much for you alone. I should get half. It's only fair." Fair. The word tasted like poison. Fair would have been her standing beside him when he was sick, holding his hand when the world fell apart. Fair would have been her loyalty, her love, her faith. Instead, she had given him betrayal. And now she dared to dress it up as fairness. I should have slammed the door in her face. But something in me, something older and sharper, decided otherwise. I smiled, a thin, cold smile. "You think you can just walk back after 15 years and claim what was his? What is now mine?" She shrugged, arrogant as ever. "The courts would see it my way. After all, I was his wife." "No," I corrected. "You were his wife. Past tense. You forfeited everything when you abandoned him." Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't expecting resistance. People like Claire never do. They expect doors to open, people to bend, the world to hand them everything. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I'll get what I want, Margaret. One way or another. You're an old woman. You won't know how to fight me." She turned on her heel and left, leaving the scent of her perfume behind like a stain in my living room. I stood frozen, clutching the frame of Daniel's photo on the mantel. His smiling face looked back at me, and I whispered, "Don't worry, son. She won't touch a dime." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every nerve in my body alive. Anger burned hot in my chest, but beneath it, a strange calm settled. She thought I was weak. She thought age made me helpless. She thought grief had broken me. What she didn't know was that grief had sharpened me. It had given me purpose. I rose at dawn, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat with Daniel's will spread across the kitchen table. His signature, bold and sure, reminded me of the man he had become. His wishes were clear, everything to me. No mention of her, no ties left binding them. She had no claim, not legally, not morally. But Claire was not a woman who respected law or morality. She was a woman who thrived on manipulation. If she couldn't win through kindness, and she had none, she would win through force. I decided then that I wouldn't just deny her. I would make her regret ever daring to challenge me. She wanted war? She would get it. But it would be a war fought on my terms, with my weapons. My first step was simple: research. I pulled out an old laptop, the one Daniel had set up for me years ago, and began digging. If Claire thought I was a frail, ignorant grandmother, she was in for a surprise. I typed her name into every search bar I could find. Social media, business registries, court records. And soon enough, her life unfolded before me like an open book. She had remarried twice since leaving Daniel. Both marriages ended in scandal. There were lawsuits, rumors of fraud, whispers of affairs. She lived in a rented penthouse in Atlanta, far beyond her means. Creditors were circling. Debt was gnawing at her heels. Her glamorous image was nothing but smoke and mirrors. And there it was, her weakness. Money. Always money. The same thing that had pulled her from my son's side was now the same rope tightening around her neck. I closed the laptop slowly, a plan already taking shape in my mind. Revenge is best when it isn't just denial. No, revenge is best when you let them believe they're winning, until the ground collapses beneath their feet. I looked again at Daniel's photo, my voice firm this time. Rest easy, my boy. She won't just lose. She'll fall. And so began my war with Claire, one I intended to win not with fists or fury, but with patience, strategy, and the ruthless wisdom of a woman who had nothing left to lose. The day after Claire showed up at my door, I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my thin gray hair into a tight bun. My reflection looked back at me, a face marked by time but steady with resolve. People think age makes you weak. What they don't understand is that with every year, you learn patience, you learn strategy, you learn how to wait and watch. A young woman fights with her fists, but an old woman fights with her mind. And my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I started with the law. The next morning, I went down to the courthouse, clutching Daniel's will in my handbag. I walked slowly, leaning on my cane, though inside I felt strong. The clerk behind the desk looked at me kindly, perhaps mistaking me for just another grieving widow. I asked her questions, carefully, politely. I wanted to know everything about Claire's chances, if she could sue, if she had a single thread to pull. The answers were clear. Daniel's will was ironclad. Claire had no legal claim. She had divorced him officially all those years ago, taking her share then and leaving him with nothing. She couldn't touch a dime now. That gave me a solid ground to stand on, but it wasn't enough. Claire wasn't going to just walk away. Women like her never do. She had shown me her hand already: threats, intimidation, manipulation. If she thought she could pressure me, she would. I needed to make sure that when she struck, she would be striking against shadows. That afternoon, I called my old friend Patricia. She and I had known each other for 50 years. Patricia was a retired private investigator. She had worked everything from insurance fraud to runaway spouses. When she picked up, her voice was raspy, tired. "Maggie," she said, "it's been too long." "It has," I replied. "And I'm afraid I wouldn't be calling unless I needed you." She chuckled. "That's how life works, isn't it? What's the trouble?" So I told her. I told her about Daniel's death, the will, and how Claire had marched back into my life like a vulture. I didn't even have to finish before Patricia sighed heavily. "That woman," she muttered. "I remember her. Pretty face, empty soul." "I need information," I said firmly. "I found some already, but I want more. Debt collectors, lawsuits, ex-husbands, whatever dirt you can find." There was a pause on the line. Then Patricia said, "I'll dig. But Maggie, what are you planning?" I hesitated, then let the truth spill. "I'm planning to bury her. Not with shovels, but with her own sins." Patricia was silent for a moment, then she laughed softly. I always knew you had fire in you. Give me a week. I hung up the phone and sat in my quiet kitchen, staring at Daniel's empty chair across from me. My grief was still there, heavy as ever, but it had turned into something else now. Fuel. Every tear I had cried hardened into steel. Over the next week, I prepared myself. Claire had always loved attention, so I gave her what she craved. I called her, my voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. Claire, I said, maybe we should talk about this, about the money. Her tone changed instantly, syrupy sweet. I knew you'd come around, Margaret. Why don't we meet? Dinner, perhaps? I'll explain how we can make this fair for both of us. Fair. That word again. I wanted to spit. But I agreed. Because that's what bait does, it lures. We met at a restaurant in Atlanta, one of those trendy places with glass walls and cold lighting. She arrived dressed in a scarlet dress that clung to her body, diamonds glinting at her ears. I wore my best navy coat, simple but dignified. She smiled too wide when she saw me. Margaret, you look strong for your age. I gave her a polite smile. And you look expensive. She laughed, mistaking it for a compliment. Over wine and steak, she laid out her demands. She wanted half of the inheritance, $12 million. She called it a settlement, as though she were negotiating with a business partner. She leaned close, her voice hushed but firm. I can make your life very difficult, Margaret. You don't want court battles, stress, bad press. Just give me what I deserve. I listened, nodding slowly, pretending to weigh her words. I could feel her smugness radiating across the table. She thought she had me cornered. Finally, I said, I'll think about it. But if I do this, it stays quiet. No gossip, no press. Daniel wouldn't want a circus. Her eyes lit up. She believed me. She thought I was cracking under pressure. Of course, she said smoothly. I'm reasonable. Reasonable. I wanted to laugh. That night, I went home and wrote everything down. Every word she said, every threat, every implied manipulation. Patricia called a few days later with more news. Claire had outstanding debts with 3 different creditors. She owed nearly $500,000. One of her ex-husbands was suing her for fraud. And the best part, she had been lying about her assets, hiding money offshore while begging for more. I sat back in my chair, letting the information wash over me like music. This was it. Her entire empire was made of paper. And I was going to set fire to it. The next step was careful. I began making quiet calls, pulling strings I hadn't pulled in years. Daniel had been good to people, bankers, lawyers, even a few politicians. Many of them still remembered me as his mother, the woman who raised him when he had nothing. And when I explained what Claire was trying to do, they didn't hesitate to help. One lawyer in particular, a sharp man named Harris, met me in his office. His walls were lined with books, his suit pressed neatly. He looked at me over his glasses. You don't want to fight her in court, he said. No, I agreed. I want to end her before she gets there. His brow lifted. You want to ruin her? I met his gaze steadily. I want to destroy her. Not physically. Not violently. But socially, financially, completely. He leaned back, studying me for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. Most people your age would have given in. But you're not most people. No, I said, my voice calm. I am a mother. And she hurt my son. That debt has been waiting 15 years. It's time to collect. Harris gave me a list of steps, legal maneuvers, strategic filings, quiet leaks to the right journalists. Each step was a thread, and together they formed a net. And then, just when I thought I had all I needed, Claire handed me more ammunition. She called me late one night, her voice slurred from wine. You better hurry, Margaret, she sneered. If you don't give me what I want, I'll make sure everyone knows what a greedy old witch you are. I'll drag Daniel's name through the mud if I have to. My hand tightened on the phone. She had no shame. No loyalty to Daniel, not even in death. That was the moment I knew, there would be no mercy. I hung up without a word, then sat in the silence of my living room, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the power coursing through me. She thought she was the hunter, but she was already trapped. The game had begun. And I was no longer just defending what was mine. I was fighting for Daniel's honor. For every tear he shed because of her. For every night he lay awake, broken-hearted, while she chased money and men. This wasn't about $24 million. This was about justice. And justice, I vowed, would be ruthless. The morning after Claire's drunken phone call, I rose earlier than usual. The sun had barely touched the horizon when I pulled out Daniel's old leather-bound journal. He used to scribble ideas, numbers, names in it. To most people it was just messy handwriting, but to me, it was a reminder of his discipline, his grit. I traced his handwriting with my finger, whispering, "This one's for you, Danny. She's not going to win." The plan began with the press. People like Claire survive on appearances, the glittering mask of wealth, charm, and sophistication. Tear the mask, and the rot underneath is revealed. I remembered something Harris had told me: the media loves a scandal. Feed them the truth, and they'll do half your work for you. So I called Patricia again. I need someone in the press. Someone hungry for a story. She chuckled. You always did know how to aim for the jugular. A few hours later, she sent me the number of a young journalist named Ellen, who worked for a mid-sized magazine but had an eye for exposés. When I spoke to Ellen, I didn't reveal everything, not yet. I painted a picture of a wealthy socialite drowning in debt, suing ex-husbands, harassing her late ex's grieving mother for money. I left her just enough crumbs to make her curious. She asked for evidence, and I promised I'd deliver. That was where Patricia came in. She dug up financial records, court filings, old testimonies. She even got statements from Claire's second ex-husband, a man named Victor who seemed more than eager to watch her burn. She ruined me, he growled over the phone when I called him myself. Took me for everything. If you're going after her, I'll hand you the match. I thanked him, my voice steady though my heart pounded. This was bigger than I had imagined. Claire hadn't just betrayed Daniel. She had left a trail of broken men, broken promises, broken lives. And now, all those broken pieces would become the weapons I used against her. While Patricia gathered more evidence, I began playing my part with Claire directly. I called her, my tone softer this time, almost hesitant. I've been thinking, Claire. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should come to some sort of arrangement. Her smug laugh echoed through the line. I knew you'd see reason. I bit back my disgust. Why don't you give me a few days? Let me move things around. I can't just write a check overnight, you know. Of course, she said smoothly. I'll give you a week. Don't make me wait longer, Margaret. I'm not a patient woman. A week. Perfect. Enough time to set the dominoes in place. During those days, I worked quietly, methodically. Harris helped me file a motion to secure Daniel's estate from frivolous claims. It wasn't necessary, but it sent a message. I was not the frail pushover Claire thought I was. Patricia handed over a thick folder of evidence: debts, lawsuits, fraud claims, even a rumor that Claire had siphoned funds from a charity she once chaired. I nearly choked when I read it. A charity. She had stolen from children, from families in need, just to fund her lavish lifestyle. That was the final nail. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice. I gave Ellen, the journalist, everything. Documents, names, numbers, even recordings of Claire's threats. Use what you can, I told her. The world needs to see her for who she is. And while Ellen prepared her article, I set my sights on the creditors. Claire owed money to some very powerful people. Men who weren't as forgiving as I was. I made anonymous calls, sent anonymous tips. She's about to come into millions, I whispered into phone lines. She's planning to pay you all back soon. But you'd better act quickly, before she hides it offshore again. By the end of the week, I had created a storm around her. Creditors were circling, ex-husbands were sharpening their knives, and the press was sniffing at her doorstep. And Claire? Claire was still strutting around in her designer heels, thinking she had me beaten. She called me again on the 7th day. Well, Margaret? Do we have an understanding? I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Why don't you come by tomorrow, Claire? We'll finalize everything. I'll have an answer for you. Tomorrow, she repeated, her voice smug. Good. I'll expect a check. After she hung up, I sat in silence, my heart thundering. Tomorrow would be the beginning of her end. The next day, she arrived at my house in a silver sports car, the kind of vehicle that screamed insecurity more than wealth. She swept into my living room as if she owned it, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I had laid out tea and cookies, keeping the facade of civility. "Let's not waste time," she said, dropping her purse on the sofa. "Do you have the check?" I folded my hands calmly. "No, Claire. I don't." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." I said no, I repeated, my voice steady. "You will not get a penny of Daniel's money. Not 1 cent. Her face twisted with rage. "You stupid, bitter old woman. You think you can fight me? I'll ruin you. I'll drag this through every court, every paper, every—" "Funny you should mention the papers," I interrupted softly. She stopped. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward slightly. "You see, Claire, people talk. Ex-husbands, creditors, journalists. And when they talk, the truth comes out. All those debts you've been hiding, all those scams, all those betrayals. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know exactly who you are." Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. You wouldn't dare." I smiled coldly. "I already have." She stood, her chair screeching against the floor. "You can't do this to me." "Oh, but I can," I said, my voice calm, even gentle. "You came into my home, demanded what wasn't yours, threatened me, threatened Daniel's memory. And now? Now you'll lose everything. Not because I took it from you, but because you handed it away piece by piece, year after year, until there was nothing left but lies. I'm just pulling back the curtain." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sat back in my chair, my heart racing but my spirit steady. It had begun. That evening, the article went live. Ellen had done her job well, too well. The headline screamed across the internet, "Socialite exposed, debt, fraud and betrayal, the fall of Claire Whitman." Her photo was plastered beneath it, her life dissected in brutal detail. Her creditors moved faster than I expected. By nightfall, her accounts were frozen. Her penthouse was under threat. Ex-husbands filed fresh claims. And I sipped my tea, watching it all unfold like a symphony I had orchestrated. The phone rang near midnight. It was Claire, her voice hoarse, desperate. "Margaret, please. You have to help me. They're coming after me. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. The same woman who had called me weak, who had threatened me, who had abandoned my son, now begging me for mercy. I let her words hang in the air for a moment before answering. "No, Claire. This is what you built. Now you get to live in it." And I hung up. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Because revenge, when it comes full circle, feels like justice. The morning after the article broke, I sat in my kitchen with a newspaper spread across the table. My coffee steamed gently, its warmth soothing my old bones, while Claire's face stared back at me from the front page. Her perfect hair, her flawless makeup, all framed under headlines that screamed her downfall. Words like fraud, debt, betrayal, lawsuits were splashed in bold letters. I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly. It was relief. After all these years, she was finally seen for what she truly was. Not the glamorous widow of a wealthy man, not the socialite with expensive dresses and charity luncheons, but a parasite. And parasites don't survive once the light exposes them. The phone rang constantly that day. Friends called to ask if I'd seen the article. Patricia called, laughing harder than I'd ever heard her laugh. "Maggie, you've done it. She's finished." But the best call of all came from Harris, the lawyer. His voice was calm but carried an edge of triumph. "Margaret, I thought you'd like to know, 3 of her creditors filed injunctions this morning. She won't be able to access her accounts until she settles with them. And given her debts, she won't be able to settle anything." I closed my eyes, savoring his words. "That's good. Very good." He paused before adding, "I've also been informed that one of her ex-husbands has reopened his fraud case against her. With this new publicity, the court is taking it seriously." I whispered a quiet thank you to Daniel. I could almost feel his presence beside me, nodding in approval. By the afternoon, the internet was ablaze with stories. Photographs of Claire leaving her penthouse in sunglasses, reporters swarming her like bees. Videos of her pushing cameras away, shouting angrily, "This is all lies." Comments flooded beneath each video, strangers tearing apart the image she had spent years building. Some mocked her. Others cursed her. A few pitied her. But none respected her anymore. That evening, Claire herself appeared at my doorstep again. Not the polished woman in designer clothes this time. No, she looked rattled. Her hair was unkempt, her makeup smudged, her once proud shoulders slumped. She banged on the door, her voice sharp but trembling. "Margaret, open this door." I took my time, smoothing my cardigan before pulling the door open. She stormed in without waiting for permission. "What did you do?" she screamed, her eyes wild. "You fed them lies. You ruined me." I stood still, my hands folded calmly in front of me. "I didn't ruin you, Claire. You did that all by yourself. All I did was hold up a mirror." She shook her head violently. "No, no, you don't understand. They've frozen everything. I can't pay my rent, my car, nothing. I'll lose everything." I raised my chin, looking her square in the eyes. "Good." Her mouth opened in shock. "Good? You evil." "Stop right there," I cut her off, my voice firm. "Do not call me names, Claire. Not in this house. You called me weak, you threatened me, you spit on my son's memory. And now you stand here begging for help? No. You made your bed 15 years ago, when you left Daniel broken. And now you'll lie in it." Her lip trembled, and for a brief moment, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. She collapsed onto my sofa, her body shaking. "Margaret, please. You don't know what it's like. I can't go back to nothing. I can't live like them." "Like who?" I asked quietly. "The nobodies," she whispered bitterly. "The ones without money, without power. I can't be one of them." Her words disgusted me. I thought of Daniel, how he had rebuilt his life with nothing but grit, how he had risen from the ashes without her. And here she was, whining that life without luxury was impossible. "You'll adjust," I said coldly. She shot up, rage flashing in her eyes. "I'll fight you. I'll take you to court. I'll drag your name through the mud." I stepped closer, close enough for her to see the steel in my eyes. "Do that, and the world will learn even more about you. Every skeleton, every lie. You won't just lose your money, Claire. You'll lose whatever scraps of dignity you have left." She faltered, her shoulders sagging again. For the first time, she looked small. She stormed out a few minutes later, slamming the door behind her. I sank into my chair, exhausted but satisfied. The battle wasn't over yet, but the cracks in her armor were widening fast. Over the next week, I watched her unravel. News outlets published follow-up stories. Photos of movers carrying her furniture out of her penthouse spread across the internet. Clips of her yelling at reporters went viral, mocked by thousands. Debt collectors lined up like wolves, and even her so-called friends began to distance themselves. Invitations to charity galas and exclusive dinners vanished. She was toxic now, a fallen queen with no kingdom. But I wasn't finished. Through Patricia, I learned she still had one hidden account overseas, money she had siphoned away over the years. It wasn't much compared to what she demanded from me, but it was enough to keep her afloat if she accessed it. I couldn't allow that. With Harris's help, we filed motions tying her fraudulent activities to that account. Quietly, carefully, I made sure the authorities took notice. By the time Claire tried to withdraw from it, it was already frozen. She was cornered. Completely. One evening, Patricia and I sat together on my porch, sipping tea. The cicadas hummed in the distance, the warm North Carolina air thick but comforting. "You've done it," Patricia said, shaking her head in disbelief. "She's finished. She'll never recover from this." I stared into my cup. Good. But it still doesn't feel like enough. Patricia gave me a long look. "You've taken everything from her, Maggie. What more could you want?" I thought of Daniel, of his kind heart, of the nights he cried after Claire left. I want her to feel it. To feel the pain she gave him. To know what it's like to be abandoned, discarded, humiliated. Only then will it be enough. Patricia was silent, but she didn't argue. She knew me well enough to understand. And fate, it seemed, agreed with me. Because the very next day, Claire reached out again, not with anger, not with threats, but with desperation. She sent me an email, her words frantic. "Margaret, please. I don't have anywhere to go. I can't pay rent, I can't even buy groceries. I'll do anything. Please help me." I read it 3 times, my heart cold. For a brief second, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered Daniel, lying in that hospital bed, waiting for a call that never came, waiting for her to walk through the door. My pity turned to ash. I crafted my reply slowly, choosing each word carefully. "Claire, you abandoned my son when he needed you most. You left him with nothing but heartbreak. Now you know what that feels like. Don't contact me again." And with that, I hit send. The satisfaction that washed over me was unlike anything I'd felt before. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't vengeful. It was justice. She had stolen his peace, and now hers was gone. But I wasn't done yet. Because if Claire thought her humiliation was complete, she hadn't yet faced the final act. The email I sent should have ended things. It should have closed the chapter, sealed the door, and left Claire to wallow in her own ruin. But people like Claire don't know when to quit. Desperation has a way of clawing through dignity until nothing is left but madness. A week later, I was sitting in church, the sun shining through stained glass windows, when Patricia slipped in beside me. Her face was grave. "She's been calling around, Maggie. Old friends, new marks. She's trying to pull herself out of the hole." I kept my eyes on the pulpit, my lips pressed tight. "And?" Patricia sighed. "Word is, she's telling people you're holding Daniel's money hostage. That you're keeping what should have been hers. She's painting you as the villain." I closed my hymnal slowly. Then it's time to end this for good. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with Daniel's will laid out in front of me once again. His neat handwriting, his ironclad words, everything he had was mine. Legally. Morally. No court in the country could take that away. But I wanted more than victory. I wanted finality. I wanted to ensure that not only would Claire never touch Daniel's fortune, but that she would never recover from her greed. And so I began planning my last move. The article had already shredded her reputation. Her creditors had stripped her of her wealth. The courts had frozen her accounts. But what she still clung to was her pride. That image of herself as a woman of influence, as someone who could still command a room, still demand respect. If I could take that from her, she would have nothing left. I called Ellen, the journalist. "I have one more piece of the story for you," I said. She sounded eager. "You've already given me enough to bury her, Mrs. Cole. What more could there be?" "Her audacity," I replied. "You don't know what she did after Daniel died. She came to my house, demanded $12 million, threatened to drag me through court. All while he lay in the ground, barely a week gone." There was a long pause. Then Ellen said, "People need to hear that." So I told her everything. The threats, the arrogance, the way Claire tried to bully an 80-year-old grieving mother out of her son's last gift. Ellen's silence stretched long on the other end of the line, then she whispered, "That's monstrous." "Exactly," I said firmly. "Write it. Publish it. Let the world know the kind of woman she truly is." And she did. A week later, the second article hit the stands. Grieving mother harassed by socialite ex-wife, $24 million demand sparks outrage. The story spread like wildfire. People were furious, not at me, but at her. Comments poured in, condemning her cruelty, her shameless greed. She was no longer just a fraud, she was a villain in the eyes of the public. Television stations picked it up. Talk shows debated it. Even the local news ran segments with titles like "When Greed Knows No Bounds." I watched it all unfold from my living room, sipping tea with Patricia by my side. Every headline, every angry comment, every news anchor shaking their head, it was music to my ears. Claire, of course, tried to fight back. She released a statement online, claiming I was lying, that I was senile, that Daniel had really meant for her to have the money. But her words fell flat. No one believed her anymore. The world had already decided, and the world is merciless once it turns on you. Within days, her name was poison. Landlords refused to rent to her. Creditors demanded payment in full. Her so-called friends blocked her calls. She went from penthouses and designer dresses to sleeping in motels, then shelters, then finally, the streets. The final blow came from the courts. With Harris's help, I made sure her fraud charges were pushed forward. And when the judge reviewed her debts, her schemes, and her attempts to extort me, the ruling was harsh. Fines. Restitution. A permanent stain on her record. She was finished. One evening, I sat on my porch as the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and pink. Patricia sat beside me, knitting, while I rocked gently in my chair. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement at the edge of the yard. It was Claire. But she wasn't the woman I once knew. She was thin, her hair unkempt, her clothes worn. She stood at the fence, clutching the wood with trembling hands, her eyes hollow. "Margaret," she croaked. "Please. Please, I have nothing. I'm starving. I don't even have shoes." I rose slowly, walking toward her with deliberate steps. My cane clicked against the porch. I stopped just a few feet away, looking at the shell of the woman who had once strutted into my house demanding millions. "You have nothing?" I asked softly. She nodded desperately. "Nothing. Please. Just a little help. Anything." I studied her face, and for the briefest second, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered Daniel. My sweet boy, lying in that hospital bed, waiting for her to come back, waiting for her love, waiting for even a shred of compassion, and receiving none. "No," I said firmly. "This is the life you chose. This is the bed you made. And now you'll lie in it." Her face crumpled, and she sank to her knees, sobbing. But I felt nothing. Not hate. Not joy. Not pity. Just peace. I turned and walked back to the porch, my steps steady, my back straight. I sat down beside Patricia, who looked at me with quiet approval. "She's gone," I whispered. Patricia nodded. "And so is her power over you." I looked up at the sky, the colors fading into twilight. "And so is her power over Daniel." For the first time since his death, I felt light. The weight I had carried, of grief, of anger, of injustice, had finally lifted. Claire had taken so much from him, from me. But in the end, she lost everything. Justice had been served. And as the stars began to appear, I closed my eyes and whispered to my son, "Rest now, Danny. She can never hurt us again."